Welcome back to Hidden Secrets. Another story, another mystery. Let's begin. Every morning at 7:00 a.m., a plain brown package appeared on my porch. No return address, no postage, just my name written in perfect, chilling script. I thought it was a secret admirer or a prank. I was wrong. It wasn't a gift, it was a stopwatch. And the man delivering them wasn't a courier. He was a predator waiting for me to leave. My name is Vance. I live in a quiet, tree-lined cul-de-sac in Oak Ridge, Virginia. It's the kind of neighborhood where people leave their back doors unlocked and know their neighbors' dogs by name. Or at least, it used to be. The packages started on a Tuesday. I stepped out to grab the morning paper, and there it was, a small, rectangular box wrapped in heavy craft paper. I checked the porch, the driveway, even the sidewalk. Nothing. No delivery truck, no footsteps in the morning dew. Just the silence of the suburbs. I took it inside. My wife, Sarah, was already pouring her second cup of coffee. "Amazon?" she asked, leaning over the kitchen island. "No labels," I muttered, grabbing a steak knife to twine the string. Inside was a single, vintage silver spoon. It was tarnished, heavy, and looked like it belonged in a museum. There was no note. "That's weird," Sarah said, picking it up. "Maybe it's from your Aunt Margaret? She's always sending random antiques." "Maybe," I said, but a cold prickle started at the base of my neck. Margaret lived in Florida and had the handwriting of a caffeinated squirrel. This script was surgical. Wednesday morning, another package. This one contained an old-fashioned pocket watch. It had stopped at exactly 10:14. Thursday, a leather-bound journal with all the pages torn out. Friday, a single, dried rose. By Saturday, the gifts weren't charming anymore. They were invasive. I installed a high-end Ring camera on the front door and a floodlight system. I stayed up until 4:00 a.m. watching the monitor, but my eyes eventually grew heavy. I blinked for what felt like seconds. When I woke up at 7:05 a.m., the notification on my phone was already there. I rushed to the porch. There was the box. I checked the footage immediately. The screen showed 6:58 a.m. The porch was empty. At 6:59 a.m., a glitch, a static flicker obscured the frame for exactly 3 seconds. When the picture cleared at 7:00 a.m., the package was sitting right there. No person, no shadow, just a box that had materialized out of thin air. "Sarah, we're calling the cops," I said, my voice shaking. Officer Miller arrived an hour later. He was a veteran cop who had seen everything from petty theft to suburban scandals. He looked at the collection of items on my dining table. "Look, Mr. Vance, technically, receiving unsolicited mail isn't a crime. There's no threat, no stalking, just weirdness. Maybe someone else playing a prank on the new guy in the neighborhood?" "I've lived here 5 years, Miller," I snapped. "And look at the footage. How does someone bypass a motion sensor camera without leaving a trace?" Miller shrugged. "Signal jammers. You can buy them for $20 online. My advice? Get a dog and keep your doors locked. If a note appears with a threat, call me." But I didn't want to wait for a threat. I'm a software engineer. I don't like bugs in my system. I decided to dig deeper. I started cataloging the items. The spoon, the watch, the journal, I realized they weren't random. The silver spoon had an engraving on the back, property of the St. Jude Parish. The pocket watch had a name inside the casing, Arthur P. Sterling. I spent the night on the dark web and local archives. My blood ran cold when I found the connection. Every item being delivered to my house was a famous, unsolved, stolen heirloom from high-profile robberies in the tri-state area over the last decade. The mystery package sender wasn't a fan. He was a professional thief, and he wasn't just giving me these items. He was planting them. "Sarah," I whispered, looking out the window into the pitch-black street. "He's not checking to see if we're home. He's making us his accomplices. If the police find this stuff here, we're the ones who look like the fence for a decade of robberies." Then, the first twist hit me. I walked to the front door to double-check the lock. I looked down at the floor mat. There was no package there. It was only 11:00 p.m. But when I looked at the hallway mirror, I saw something that made my heart stop. Inside the leather-bound journal I had left on the table, the one with the torn-out pages, a new page had been glued in. I hadn't seen it before. On the page was a hand-drawn map of my house. Every window, every door, and every blind spot in my security system was marked in red ink. At the bottom, in that same perfect script, were the words, "See you at 10:14. The watch. The pocket watch had stopped at 10:14. It wasn't a time from the past. It was a countdown for the future. And tomorrow was Sunday. I stood in the hallway, the kitchen knife trembling in my hand. 10:13 p.m. The red map in the journal was staring back at me from the table, a crimson blueprint of my own sanctuary turned into a hunting ground. I looked at the bathroom mirror, the one where I'd heard the faint, melodic whistling. Clink. It was the sound of metal on metal, coming from behind the glass. I realized then that the signal jammers weren't just blocking my cameras from the outside. The interference was coming from inside the house. "Sarah, get in the car. Now." I yelled, not caring about being quiet anymore. Sarah ran down the stairs, her face pale. "Leo, what's happening? I heard someone in the attic." "Don't ask questions, just grab the keys and go to the police station. I'll be right behind you." I watched her pull out of the driveway, her taillights disappearing into the foggy night. I didn't follow her. If I left now, this ghost would vanish, taking the evidence with him and leaving me to explain a house full of stolen heirlooms to the FBI. I needed to see his face. I went back into the kitchen and grabbed my laptop. I didn't check the Ring camera this time. I checked the smart home power consumption logs. In a modern house, everything leaves a footprint. If someone was moving through the walls, they were hitting the sensors. There it was. A spike in the basement at 6:55 a.m. every morning. Another spike in the master bedroom at 3:00 a.m. And a steady, low-voltage draw from the guest room's walk-in closet. I walked to the guest room. This room had always been cold, a place we rarely used. I pushed aside the coats and pressed my ear against the back wall. Thump, thump, thump. It was the steady rhythm of a heartbeat, or a machine. I felt around the baseboard until my fingers caught on a small, recessed latch. The back panel of the closet didn't just move, it slid open with the silent precision of a luxury car door. Behind the wall was a space that shouldn't have existed. It was a narrow, vertical shaft that ran from the basement to the attic, lined with monitors, a sleeping bag, and a workbench. This was the dead zone, a hidden pocket built into the original design of the house. On the workbench lay the next package. It was already wrapped in brown paper, ready for tomorrow's 7:00 a.m. delivery. I tore it open. Inside was a heavy gold signet ring with the initials E.V. Elias Vance, my grandfather. The second twist hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a random house, and this wasn't a random thief. Elias Vance had been a master carpenter who disappeared in the late 90s after being accused of a string of high-end burglaries. He was never caught. The police thought he fled to Mexico. But Elias hadn't fled. He had built this house. He had lived in the shadows of the families who bought it, moving from one Vance construction home to another, using the owners as unwitting storage lockers for his life's work. "You were always the curious one, Leo," a voice rasped from the darkness above. I looked up. A man was descending the ladder. He looked like a nightmare version of my own father, thin, wiry, with eyes that had spent too much time in the dark. He was wearing a gray jumpsuit and held a device that looked like a modified remote control. "Grandpa," I whispered, the knife slipping from my fingers. "Don't call me that," he said, stepping into the light. "I'm just the landlord. And you're 3 decades behind on the real rent." He held up the remote. "I didn't choose this house because of you, Leo. I chose it because of what's buried under the foundation. The packages, they weren't for you. They were a test. I needed to see if you had the Vance eye, if you could spot the glitch, if you could find the hidden truth." "You're framing me," I said, my voice rising. "You're putting stolen goods in my house so when the feds finally track you, you can walk away and leave me with the bill." Elias smiled, showing yellowed teeth. "No, Leo, I'm retiring, and every king needs a successor. The 10:14 countdown isn't for a robbery, it's for the final transfer. At 10:14 p.m. tonight, the security system of the National Archives, 3 blocks from here, is going to have the same static glitch your porch camera had." He pointed to the monitor. It showed a live feed of the National Archives vault. "And you," Elias whispered, "are going to be the one who walks through the front door." The third twist was the most terrifying. The map in the journal wasn't of my house. It was a map of the tunnel system connecting my basement to the city's underground infrastructure. My house wasn't just a home, it was a port of entry, and my grandfather hadn't spent years watching me out of love. He'd been training me to be the final piece of his greatest heist. "I'm not doing it," I said, backing away toward the closet door. "You already have," Elias said, clicking a button on his remote. Suddenly, the house's alarm system blared, but it wasn't the intruder alert. It was the emergency fire protocol. Magnetic locks slammed shut on every window and door. Blue light flooded the hallway. "The police are already on their way, Leo. I triggered the silent alarm with your fingerprint from the silver spoon you touched on Tuesday. When they get here, they'll find the stolen heirlooms, the hidden room, and you standing over the dead zone. Or You can take the tunnel and the ledger and disappear before the first siren hits the driveway. I looked at the monitor. I could see the blue and red lights reflecting off the neighborhood trees. I had 30 seconds to decide, be a victim of the past or become the ghost of the future. The sirens were no longer a distant hum, they were a screaming reality, bouncing off the brick walls of my quiet cul-de-sac. The blue and red strobes flashed through the high windows of the guest room, illuminating the dead zone like a neon tomb. 20 seconds, Leo, Elias rasped, his eyes fixed on the monitors. The police won't ask questions when they see the St. Jude silver on your table. They'll see a software engineer with a hidden room and a collection of federal heists. In their eyes, you're not the grandson, you're the masterpiece. I looked at the slide-away floor panel in the corner of the hidden shaft. A dark concrete maw waited there, a ladder descending into a humid, lightless void. Why now? I asked, my voice trembling. Why wait 20 years to pull me into this? Because the world changed, Leo, Elias said, his fingers dancing over a tablet. In my day, it was about lockpicks and shadows. Now it's about code. I built the tunnels, but I needed someone who could breathe life into the digital side. You think your high-end software job was a coincidence? I funded your scholarship. I picked your first firm. I've been grooming your brain for this night since you learned to crawl. I felt a wave of nausea. My entire career, my success, was just a long-term investment for a ghost. I heard the front door of the house splinter. Police! Drop the weapon. The sound of heavy boots thudded onto the hardwood floors of the living room. They were in the house. Go! Elias hissed, shoving a heavy, waterproof satchel into my hands. Take the tunnel. It leads to the main utility junction under the archives. At the end of the line, there's a terminal. Plug in the satchel, run the glitch script I saw you developing for your firm last month, and the vault doors will think they're already closed. You have 5 minutes. I didn't have a choice. I dove into the hole. The air in the tunnel was cold and smelled of wet earth and copper. I scrambled down the ladder just as the closet door upstairs was kicked open. I heard the confused shouts of the officers as they discovered the sliding panel, but Elias was faster. He hit a switch, and the heavy lead-lined floorboard slammed shut above me, muffling the world. I was alone in the dark. I clicked on the tactical light attached to the satchel. The tunnel wasn't just a sewer line, it was a marvel of illicit engineering. The walls were reinforced with the same high-grade steel I'd seen in my grandfather's old workshop photos. Every 10 yards, a small, numbered package was tucked into a wall niche, more gifts for the future, more lives to be framed if things went wrong. I ran. My lungs burned as I navigated the labyrinth. I wasn't just running through the dirt, I was running through the history of my family's crimes. I saw crates labeled with dates from the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s. My grandfather hadn't just been hiding, he'd been hoarding the soul of the city. After what felt like miles, the tunnel opened up into a massive, vaulted chamber. The hum of high-voltage electricity vibrated in my teeth. Above me was the reinforced concrete floor of the National Archives. I found the terminal, a sleek black console hidden behind a fake transformer box. I opened the satchel. Inside wasn't just a laptop, there was a photo. It was a picture of me and Sarah on our wedding day. On the back, in that same surgical script, it said, "The only thing more valuable than gold is a clean slate." I realized then what the final heist was. Elias didn't want the Declaration of Independence or gold bars. The National Archives held the digitized records of every federal investigation, every witness protection file, and every active warrant in the United States. If I ran the script, I wouldn't just be stealing data. I'd be deleting Elias Vance. I'd be deleting the evidence in my house. I'd be deleting myself from the police records that were being created at this very moment in my living room. I plugged it in. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Do it, Leo," a voice echoed through the chamber. It wasn't Elias. It was coming from the terminal's speakers. "Who is this?" I demanded. "This is the man who's been delivering the packages," the voice replied. It was smooth, professional, and sounded nothing like my grandfather. "Your grandfather didn't build this tunnel alone. He had a partner, someone who handled the logistics. And I think it's time you met the real owner of the Vance legacy." The screen flickered. A live feed of my house appeared, but it wasn't the police I saw. The men in my living room weren't cops. They were wearing tactical gear with no insignia. They were moving through my home with the efficiency of a cleanup crew, packing the silver spoons and the gold rings into black bags. "Police aren't coming, Leo," the voice said. "That was just a sound effect played through your smart home speakers. Elias is a relic. He thinks he's in control. But you and I, we're the new era. Run the script and we both walk away with the keys to the kingdom. Refuse and those police officers will find Sarah. She's only 2 blocks away, stopped at a random security checkpoint we set up. The third twist had arrived, and it was the deadliest one yet. Elias wasn't the mastermind. He was the bait. He was being used by a much younger, much more dangerous partner to lure me to this terminal. And Sarah was the collateral. I looked at the glitch script on the screen. It was ready. 1 keystroke to save her. 1 keystroke to become the thing I feared most. I looked up at the ceiling, imagining the massive vault of secrets sitting directly above my head. My grandfather had tried to give me a gift. His partner was giving me a choice. But neither of them knew that I had one secret of my own, a piece of code I'd written years ago that didn't just bypass security. It destroyed it. I stared at the blinking cursor on the terminal. The voice on the speakers, the partner, was waiting for me to surrender. He thought he had me trapped between a criminal inheritance and my wife's life. But as a software engineer, I knew something he didn't. Every system has a backdoor, especially the ones built on greed. 3 seconds, Leo, the voice prompted. Delete the records and Sarah walks, it's that simple. It's never that simple, I whispered. I didn't run the script to delete the Vance legacy. Instead, I executed a command I had spent my entire career perfecting. A 0-day virus designed to reflect a signal back to its source. I didn't just plug into the archives. I used the archive's massive server power to trace the origin of the static glitch that had been haunting my house. The screen erupted in a waterfall of green code. Suddenly, the live feed of my house changed. The men in tactical gear, the cleanup crew, stopped in their tracks. Their headsets began to emit a high-pitched squeal. "What are you doing?" the voice screamed, no longer smooth or professional. "Stop the sequence." "You wanted a glitch?" I said, my voice cold and steady. "I'm giving you the mother of all glitches. I've just redirected the National Archives security protocols to your location." Every federal agency in a 50-mile radius just received an alert that a high-value theft is in progress at my address, coordinated from your GPS coordinates. I hit the final key. The terminal didn't just delete files. It broadcasted the live video of the partner's tactical team stealing federal evidence directly to the real police department. The fourth twist? The partner wasn't some mysterious criminal mastermind. As the trace finalized on my screen, a name and a photo appeared. It was Officer Miller, the veteran cop who had come to my house on Tuesday. He wasn't investigating the crime, he was the one facilitating it, using his badge to cover the tracks while Elias built the tunnels. "Leo, get out of there." Elias' voice cracked through the secondary channel in the wall. He had been listening from the dead zone. "The tunnels are rigged. If the archive's security is triggered, the whole junction floods." I didn't wait. I grabbed the satchel, which now contained the digital proof of Miller's corruption, and sprinted back into the dark crawlspace. Behind me, I heard the massive steel doors of the vault above grinding shut, and the sound of rushing water began to echo through the concrete pipes. I scrambled up the ladder into the guest room closet just as the real sirens, not the smart home sound effects, screeched to a halt in front of my house. I burst into the living room. Miller was there, his face twisted in a mask of fury. He had his service weapon drawn, pointed at Elias, who was standing by the dining table covered in silver spoons. "You're done, Vance," Miller hissed. "Give me the drive or I'll claim I shot a resisting suspect." "He doesn't have it, Miller," I said, stepping out of the shadows. I held up my phone, which was still streaming the trace data to the precinct's main server. "The whole department is watching you right now. You're not a partner anymore. You're a viral video." Miller looked at my phone, then at the flashing lights outside. He knew it was over. He dropped his gun just as the front door was kicked in by the actual SWAT team. 6 months later, the cul-de-sac in Oak Ridge returned to its quiet, boring self, but the house at the end of the street was different. I didn't sell it. I didn't tear it down. Elias Vance went to prison, but in a strange way, he got what he wanted. He became a legend, the man who built a kingdom in the walls. Miller is serving 30 years for racketeering and attempted murder. And as for me, I'm still a software engineer. But I don't work for a firm anymore. I work for the National Archives as a security consultant. Every now and then, a package arrives on my porch. It's never wrapped in brown paper anymore. It's usually just a postcard from Sarah, who is currently traveling the world on the clean slate we finally earned. But sometimes, at exactly 7:00 a.m., my security camera still glitches for 3 seconds. I don't worry about it anymore. Because now, I'm the one who wrote the glitch. And I'm the only one who knows what's hidden in the static. The most dangerous secrets aren't the ones buried in the ground, They're the ones living in your walls, watching you sleep. Leo Vance turned the tables on a master thief and a corrupt cop using the very gifts they used to frame him. If you loved this high-stakes tale of pro-revenge and the dark side of the suburbs, subscribe to Hidden Secrets. We unbox the truth, one mystery at a time. Hit the bell, leave a comment if you've ever had a glitch in your home security, and remember, check your walls. You never know who's paying the rent.